Okay, so to practice a little bit with the UVs, we're going to download a model. I thought it'd be simpler to explain if we use a one mesh model. Our Lego figure has many objects put together, so it'll be simpler with this. So to get the file or the model we're going to use, go to Canvas, and on the left side you will see on the menu Files, and just type here on the search bar Base Mesh, and click on the search glass, and you'll see it right here. So download this, open it in Maya. Actually, if you have Maya open, it might open a new instance of Maya. In this case, it's asking me to save it. I'm just gonna put it on the desktop now because this is just a practice file. So I'm gonna put it here, and I'm going to go into Maya and open it. File open, base mesh for UVs, and here it is. So this is a simple mesh. It's like a start for other things here. So if we look at the UVs for this single mesh, we're going to change the workspace to UV editing. You will see the UVs for the object. So I purposely messed them up here so they are not done at all. We'll make the UVs for this object. And remember, when we're cutting UVs, we're not actually cutting the object itself. We're cutting sort of like a skin that sits on top of the object. So we will not be using the actual knife, but there's other tools for UVing which are in here. And they're also on the UV modeling toolkit. There's my UV toolkit. So the first thing we want to do is, if you look at your model, it's showing you white lines on it and different colors. So these colors are pieces that are already cut off, and they're called shells and UV. Kind of like when you have a cutting pattern, you have this piece of fabric that you're going to join to the other side. That's a shell, and UV, talking UV. So this would be a shell. So if you look in here, all these different colors represent different shells that have been cut, and the white lines represent the cuts that this model has already. So we don't want any of those cuts. We're gonna sew them all back together, and there's a simple way to do this. If we go to the UV menu on the top and then go down to Planar, and we're going to technically project our UV. So I'm going to click on the option box. This window will open and it will say, okay, which plane do you want to use to take a picture of the model here? And you usually want a plane that represents the model closely. If you don't know which plane to pick, just look at the gizmo here on the bottom left. It tells you which axis you could use. If you take a picture from the z-axis, and take the picture that way, you would probably understand what the model looks like. So we're going to select z-axis here and say project, and you're going to see, oh yeah, that looks like my model. It's a little closer to it. It's like the front view. If you make a mistake, you can always go back and do it again. Select the option box. Let's say you accidentally hit X and say project. It's just going to show you the side of your model, and you will notice right away it's trying to stretch it to fit this square, this one square. This is called the 0 to 1 range, and I'll talk about it a little bit later. But usually you want to keep your UVs inside of that range. I'm gonna go back to UV planar projection and just pick the z-axis, which is the front one, which look closest to my model. So it looks like my model is the UVs are laid out, but they actually aren't. If you but you see all this, the cuts on my model were sewn back together. Also, the back is sewn together. So if I mouse over here over a face on the back, I see it is behind the one on the front. If I were, let's say I was taking this picture to Photoshop and painting a drawing on the front. Let's say I was drawing my t-shirt in here. If I'm drawing on the front, I would also be painting on the back of the model at the same time because my faces are right behind it. So we gotta lay this model flat. To do lay the model flat in UVs, there's two tools that you use all the time, or three, we'll say three. They are cut and sew, and also unfold. If you were a tailor, my grandpa was actually a tailor, you'd be proud of me cutting patterns, or he would say, why are you a polygon pusher? Anyway, so we're going to cut patterns in here, or UV shells. So if you look on the side here, there is the cut and sew tool right here. And you can cut either on the perspective or here on the UV editor, which is kind of like a working table. We'll do it here on the UV, on the perspective view first. So what I'm going to do is select an edge here and double click on it. If I'm thinking about a t-shirt, you know, you probably can see in your t-shirt, it has like a seam kind of on the shoulder somewhere. And then it goes to the wrist and it ends right there at the wrists. So I'm just holding shift and clicking here, double clicking on the loops, make sure it selects the whole loop. And then if you look at the sleeve on your shirt, the seam is usually hidden, and that's on purpose, because let's say you had a pattern with like basketballs on it, you know, if the seams don't match, you know, the balls might be off a little bit. So usually you want to hide the seam. So I'm going to hide this seam under the arm. So I'm going to hold shift, and I'm going to select the first edge here and then go close to the armpit where I have the other loop selected, and double click here and select that edge. So I have this selected like this. So this is how we used to do it back in the day. You know, by hand we would select the edges and click and cut, you know. So now that I have the edges selected, I can go on the side here and say cut those edges, you know. And by the same token, I can go and say sew the edges together. So if I didn't want that cut there, if I wanted to move it, I can select the edges and say sew. And this is how we used to do it back in the day. I'm just going to cut them again. So that's the first two tools you use all the time, pretty much, the cut and sew. And then to see it flat in here, you can right click in here and say UV shell, which is kind of like that pattern we cut. And if you did it right, you'll see when you mouse over the piece you cut or the shell we cut, it's only highlighting that piece. It's not highlighting the rest of the body or the hand. It's just highlighting the arm. So if I select it now and say unfold, you know, there's the arm unfolded flat. So I could take a picture of this, take it to Photoshop and paint it. You know, I could put an insignia here on the arm or something else on the sleeve that I wanted to paint, and it'd be a lot easier to paint it on a flat surface, right, or in a flat file. So now I need to do the same for the rest of the model. But I've shown you how to do it the old-fashioned way with cut and sew. So just like analog to cutting and sewing clothing, we're going to do it with some of the new tools here. So I'm going to hit 5 so I can see my model again. If you see, it's representing the cuts with different colors. Show me the hand is a different color. So if you see a same color on two shells that you thought you cut, most likely you missed an edge to cut somewhere. So I'm going to grab the 3D cut and sew tool. So it's under UVs here, UV 3D cut and sew tool, or it's also up here. It looks like a needle and a knife. And remember, we're not technically cutting the model, we're just cutting UVs or on top of the model. So I would have to think, okay, how do I want to cut this so it looks good? So maybe you can relate to pants. You know, pants, you see them every day, so it's kind of easier to cut. So we'll say, okay, well, with the 3D cut and sew tool, we'll right click and say I want to cut edges. Let's say I'll cut the leg here and see it cut all the way up. So it's behaving like when you regularly double click on a loop. But the nice thing about this is that you can click and drag over an edge and it will cut it, or it should cut it. Sometimes it doesn't want to work like it's doing right now. There we go. So you can click and drag on an edge, and then if you make a mistake, you can hold control on your keyboard and drag over that edge and it will sew it back together. But I'm going to cut this again. I'm going to click and drag over it and maybe go back here down. I'm going to make a seam here for the leg. Maybe go around here and cut it down here. Let's see, where did I end here? So I'm going to cut from here to here. And I'm also going to cut the ankle because usually your pants end at the ankle. So I'm going to cut it right there. I just double click on the loop and it goes all the way around or as far as it can. Now I need to close the cut in here. So I'm going to double click in here. It should respect the last cut you made. So it did respect it. It stopped right there. It didn't continue going up. So that's very nice. So if I do the same over here on this side, I can do the same. I can double click. It will cut all the way around and end where I want it to end. Now I can keep the leg here the same way. So I'm going to click and drag up and then go this way and double click. See, and if it doesn't know which way to go, it will stop for you. So in here, there's 5 edges coming to one point, so it doesn't know which one to take. It's not like a straight edge like this. It has 5 points going to it, so or 5 edges going to it. So we're gonna tell it which way to go. I'm gonna double click here. There it is. Now we have our cuts. I think they should be separate. We're going to cut the seam on the leg because we can't open the pants if there's not a seam on the leg. So we're gonna cut it here and cut the other side. And instead of doing it this way, we could have symmetry turned on, which would save you half the work. So we're gonna go over here and turn on symmetry. We're gonna say Object X. Now anything I do to the one side is gonna be done to the other side. So I'm going to cut the hand next. The hand, if you think about it, you've probably seen your gloves. They have like a seam, or your leather gloves have a seam on the bottom and then at the top. So we're going to do the same cut here, like separate the top from the bottom. Make sure it did cut it. It looks like it did. It looks like it went all the way around. We're going to do the same to the, I guess I don't have to do the other side because it's already done. I'm going to just finish this because I did this one by hand on the other side without symmetry being turned on. There it is. So now the hand's 2 different colors there. Oh, I didn't cut this thing right there. Or this. Huh, my symmetry is not working that great actually. Probably because I cut the other side by hand first. There we go. So that should be separate from the top. Okay, so now we're going to cut the head. And the head is kind of intimidating. There's all this geometry on it, but really you just want to paint the front of it flat usually. So you want to keep it together and not have a seam on the middle. If you have a seam on the middle, imagine you're painting one half of the face and it doesn't match the other side of the face on Photoshop. Let me just show you what I mean. So let's say I cut my face like this. I'm going to put a seam here and then I'm going to unfold them. So I'm going to hit Q here to get rid of the 3D cut and sew tool. Select this shell. Still sync together at some point. Oh, it's because I have symmetry selected. So let me turn off symmetry. So let me select this side and unfold it. So I'm going to click here, unfold. There's one side of the face. And I'm going to unfold the other side of the face. So this is the problem with seams. Let's say you're painting this face in Photoshop and you have this side painted really well and this side too. But then you have some freckles here that go across the nose. And if this freckle over here, if you paint it on this side, doesn't match it this side, you would have a really obvious seam right on the middle of the face, which is where everybody looks. So we want to hide our seams the best we can. So the best way to hide a seam on the face would be to cut under the hairline and go back. So I'm going to undo this cut here. I'm going to hold Control. Oh, get my 3D cut and sew tool again and tell it that I want to cut edges by right clicking and holding. And I'm going to hold Control and double click to get rid of that seam. My face is all distorted here, but we'll fix it in a second here. So what we're going to do is just start cutting here, like kind of where the hairline starts, and go back. And I could actually just double click now because it should respect my cut here. Stop at it. So I'm going to double click here. Yeah, it did stop. And then it went back down to the neck. So actually it's a good idea to separate the neck from the head sometimes. It kind of distorts the head too much when you're cutting everything at once. So I'm going to separate the neck from the head, and I'm going to undo this cut and put it here actually where the neck starts. So I'm just going around double clicking. I want you to try this, you know, and then upload it on Tuesday night. There we go. Okay, so I have the neck and the head separated, and the front of the face is one continuous shape, is not cut. So now I can come over here, select my shell. So I'm going to hit Q first to get rid of my 3D cut and sew tool. So I'm going to hit Q, and then right click on this shell and say UV shell. Click on it. Remember to click on it. If not, it's not going to work. Unfold it, and that's what the face look like flattened, right? So it's kind of like that dinosaur on Jurassic Park. You know, it's kind of scary looking, but you know, most 3D objects when they're flattened, they don't look correct. But to paint them is the right way to do it. So I'm going to unfold the neck too. Also, there's the neck. So I'm gonna keep it close to the face here, so I know what it is. And if they're in my way, I can actually move them out of the way here. I can select them and hit W and move them out of the way, so I can work on the rest of the body now. So I'm going to cut the... Oh, I need to select my tool here. I'm going to select my component edge and cut the shoulder here. Make sure it's separate from the hand. So there it is. The body, you can do it many ways. A lot of the time people cut it on the back. So it's kind of like a suit you put on. It has the zipper on the back. So with this 3D tool, you can cut a model pretty fast. You know, you just double click, go around your model, double click. Let's say the shoes, if I hit one, usually if you look at your shoes, the sole is separate from the top. So I'm going to just double click on these edges here, go around it, make sure it cuts everything. And if I had symmetry on, would be better, but I forgot to turn it on. So I'm gonna just finish this by hand. It will be quick. And then your shoes usually have a cut on the back. It's just covered by a little wedge shape on the heel. But we'll say that's good. So just like that, we have our model cut. So this 3D cut and sew tool is really, really fast. It helps you do things really fast. Oh, I missed a cut here under the arm. So I'm going to cut it there, and we're good to go. Okay, so I'm going to unfold everything now. I have everything cut. I just have to unfold it. So I'm going to hit Q to drop the 3D sew and cut tool and just get the selection tool. And I'm going to come to the UV editor and say UV shell. Select my shell for the body and say unfold. There's the body unfolded. Going to do the same to the arm. You're probably wondering why don't I pick everything at once and unfold everything. Sometimes you get strange results with that. So it's better to not push it so much, you know. When I was working doing UVs back in the day, I had to do all this by hand, like move points by hand. It was pretty terrible. And I don't know if I did this right because it's selecting both shells here. Doesn't look like I cut it all the way somewhere. Oh, yep, I'm missing a cut between the legs here. So I'm going to grab my tool again. Or if for some reason this tool, sometimes it doesn't work, you can just grab the edges by hand, you know, with the regular selection tool with this one, and just select here, hold shift, double click where you want to end the selection. Oops, I selected something else by accident. So click on the first edge, hold shift, select the last one, and double click. So that edge is selected there, from here to there, and just click on cut. At some point, you will have to use it, you know. It's like there's no way around it. At some point, the 3D cut and sew tool fails. So it's good to know the old ones too. So I'm gonna hit 5 to get my texture back. And I should be just selecting one shell now. Yep, I am selecting just one. So I'm gonna come over here, select it, and say unfold. There's one leg. Select the other one, say unfold, and move it to the side. Going to do the same to the shoes. Unfold. There's the top of the shoe. That's what it looks like. Unfold it and cut at the back. Select that one, unfold. I think everything's unfolded except the bottom of the feet here, the soles. So they just look like a line, because when I took the planar projection, you know, that's what it looks like when you look at it from the front. The bottom of the feet look like a straight line. So that's what it's seeing here. So it might not know how to unfold it. So if I click on unfold, yeah, it didn't do anything. It kind of disappeared. So it doesn't know. I'm going to undo. It doesn't know which way to unfold it because it's just a straight line. It's too much for it to think about. So what I'm going to do is select both shells here. I'm going to hold shift and select the other shell. And I can select them both and go UV and do another planar projection, but this time from the top. So I'm going to select the option box, say projector from the top, and project. So there's the two bottom of the feet. They are huge because I haven't explained it yet, but Maya is trying to use the whole range of the 0 to 1 range. So I'm just going to hit scale, kind of make those smaller, and kind of the same size on the feet here. The next thing we need to do is lay out all these pieces in this 0 to 1 range so they make sense. So what we need to do is select them all, and you can do it this way. If you go to the UV editor menu and you say UV modify layout, and Maya will try to use all the space available to you and lay out things so they fit inside the 0 to 1 range. The reason why it wants to put it inside that range is because this you're going to take to a 2D software to paint or to apply textures to it. But if you look at it, it's done, yeah, it's using the space pretty well, but it's put things kind of on a strange order. It's made like the foot really big, the head kind of small, which usually you look at a character's face a lot more than you look at their feet, right? So this is not making much sense. So I don't know which hand this is. So it looks like it's the bottom of the right hand, and that's the top of the left. So it's kind of put things however it felt like it, right? Let's just do some math and put it the best it can. So sometimes it doesn't do a great job. It's better if you organize your objects yourself. So I can scale things here because I know I'm not going to need the shoes to be, you know, that big. Not many people's going to put that much attention to it. I'm going to put them over here, kind of about the same size. One thing you want to do is look at your distortion on UVs. So if you look up here on the UV editor, you see this shows the edges of your shells here. The next one over show you the different colors. I don't know why it's not showing the colors now, but it shows you the colors of it. This shows you where it's distortion, this next shape, this next button. So anywhere that is red, you know, this object is having distortion, so it's stretching a lot. So if you were to put a picture on it, you would see distortion on those areas. And I don't have a picture right here, but I have on by the button to display the texture, I have a checker box pattern that I can put on. So if I turn it on here, and then I get out of the distortion view here, show me my pattern, please. So I'm showing my pattern.